Thank you, Julien. Good morning. Thank you for your presence, for attending this session. It will be brief. I have noted down the instructions. So I discovered when I produced this series on podcast on how to be an investigative journalist in Africa, I discovered the know-how of the Maison des Reporters, which is a pure player, and it's a media that has a lot to say on how to make crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, so that it is at the benefit of an investigation. Which is important because we might think that investigation is only for structured media outlets. And you'll see that with Moussa's experience and with La Maison des Reporters, it's not the case. You can start from scratch and obtain some results. Moussa Ngom, he's already been working in the sector for a long time, even though he's only 29. You've got quite a traditional career. You went to the University of Dakar. You did internships in audiovisual in Dakar. These experiences, professional experiences, disappointed you at the time regarding the local media system, and you wanted to proceed differently. How? Well, by creating your own media that is available online, self-funded by the readers, and you work with other journalists, freelance journalists. It's an independent media. It is managed by journalists, and it's called La Maison des Reporters, the reporter's house. What is it? Well, it's a media that is promoting collaboration between journalists. There are 112 journalists in different regions in Senegal, and it's meant to offer an alternative in a media landscape that is impacted by the tyranny of common. So we're trying to feed the public space with this media. It's also a way to bring together people who are as disappointed as me. In our network, 98% of the journalists are young, less than 30, and we're offering here a framework with time, freedom, and means to investigate, because it is fact-based journalism, and we're trying to offer high-quality information. So how does it work in concrete terms? Your colleagues, they turn to you, they submit an article, a story. I'm coordinating the team, and I like to say that sometimes journalists will do their investigation without us never meeting up. So sometimes we don't meet. And sometimes we work on collective investigation. So for instance, we can work on health in Senegal, and we're going to suggest topics to the journalists that are in our database. So we will each submit a topic of public interest. We analyze it, and then we investigate. And that's the case with the Mag des Reporters, the Reporters magazine. That's how we proceed. The journalists submit a topic, and with a team of mentors, we refine the investigation on which the journalist is going to work on, and then we make sure that it's going to be published, that is checked, that the regulations are respected as well, because in investigative journalism, sometimes the journalists don't have all the necessary skills to do it. Sometimes it's a lack of experience, so we support them on a voluntary basis, then a team of journalists. What struck me when I discovered La Maison des Reporters is that you're choosing stories that are extremely original, more particularly in the context of Senegal, because you are choosing to investigate on stories that are placing people at the center. So, for instance, there was an investigation on driving licenses. I thought it was particularly interesting. You might tell us a little bit about it. It was on a system of corruption in driving license world. And you said that you received lots of testimonies, and all those testimonies sent to journalists allowed us to to work on a very serious and solid investigation. Yes, the stories are usually quite timeless because, for instance, if a candidate has to face this issue of corruption in whenever they want to pass their driving license, then they refer to that investigation. And usually we start with a very simple question. A person who wants to pass a driving license says, I heard rumors saying that there is corruption in this sector. And we will find an interest in this. And very often we experiment things. So, for instance, we experimented from within. We studied it, and we saw that it made the candidates pay some money to pass their test. And even if they fail, they have to pay some money. Otherwise, they will have to wait forever and ever to be able to obtain their driving license. So we make those experiments, and it's a series of investigation on corruption. We analyze corruption at the borders, on the roads, and when passports are delivered as well. Those stories are told from the field. So very often when you think about investigation, you think you're receiving documents. But when we're talking about the daily challenges of Senegalese people, then we experiment them from within. So it doesn't mean that you don't tackle political issues. You published an investigation on how the political system in Senegal works, and it was a video investigation. You did it in partnership with Le Monde Afrique. Could you tell us why it was interesting, why you chose this story, and how you were able to produce it? It's an investigation that shows how La Maison des Reporters works, because it was a long-term investigation. This investigation lasted 2 years. Sometimes every now and then we felt a bit desperate about it. We thought we wouldn't have enough information to publish it. But we sent civilian journalists in 2021. They were working with the police force with truncheons and weapons, and they were facing the protestants. So we saw in 2023 that it was even more dangerous. The animal was even more dangerous because we saw that they were carrying firearms. And an internet user said that regarding the nervi, only the journalists can tell us what is happening. And that's what the Maison des Reporters did. We investigated the organization, the nervi, and we were able to establish the fact that they are dangerous people, armed people that are working alongside the police force, and they're recruited by political representatives. And that's what we wanted to do, to identify who was responsible in this process. And we saw that then the government launched an investigation to clarify the situation. If you haven't seen it, watch this video investigation on the website of La Maison des Reporters. It's striking. Regarding your business model, Moussa, how do you fund yourself? Well, our business model, as I said, quite often in investigation, one of the main challenges is to remain independent. And sometimes that's about the business model. Many journalists who start investigation, they have to face this challenge and they are lacking funds. We try to counteract this. And our philosophy is that we know we have a heterogeneous audience. They have we have a direct relationship with our audience, and the audience's interest is the public interest. So there is no conflict of interest here, or there is no interest that is going to overcome other interests. It's the journalist who is going to assess the topics, who is going to then deliver a high quality information to this audience. And depending on the quality of our work, that's how we then realize that we receive funds and donations. You don't pay to have access to our content because we want to offer high quality information, and we don't want it not to be accessible to certain parts of the society. We don't want to target an elite. So this is why we consider that each donation is a real victory. Each donation is a real victory because it is given by an audience that is not used to pay to fund information, an audience that has other expense priorities, spending priorities, and it's an access to information that is almost free. So if you want to donate so that you want the Maison des Reporters to produce information, then that means that you've perceived the added value. So that's the essence of our business model. Regarding how balanced our business model is, it's a permanent struggle. And I tend to say that La Maison des Reporters works at the minimum of its ambitions and the maximum of its capacities. So we receive lots of requests for investigation. We can't necessarily fund them all, but we do our best with what we have, and it works because we have donors and we haven't reached the perfect balance. But there are victories, there are donations that are sent in a voluntary way. We can adapt to the context as well, and we can use technological tools and the social and economic context in our country. So, to be very clear, if you go on the website of La Maison des Reporters, there is a button that you can click on to donate, because the Maison des Reporters only exists because of donations. The information is not sold, so that it can be accessed by a large audience. And when you create a media, one of the main challenges is to make yourself known, and your partnership with Le Monde Afrique allowed you to build your reputation, but it's important for you to be known by a larger number of people. The music, the jingle, indicates that it's part of the second part of our morning session. And do you have questions on Moussa's work and La Maison des Reporters? I am going to moderate the next room, but that's not because of this that I'm asking a question, but just a question: when you are collaborating with Le Monde Afrique or La Revue 21, the 21 magazine, are you also paid for this? Apart from donations, is that a way for you to make some money? Yes, for example, during our last investigation on the Navy, we were paid for this. Our own work is a way of selling what we do. So we realize that depending on the number of people who have access to the content of La Maison des Reporters, usually we hook them on this way, and there is a payment system, and there's also more visibility attached to this. So if you look at our last investigation, the level of donations that we received represents approximately a third of our previous balance sheet. So it's important to have this type of collaborations because we want to encourage this at the local and national level. We want to be able to collaborate with local newspapers, media outlets. It's not possible yet, but it's also very interesting to do that with international media outlets because they have a lot of visibility. Moussa, you were saying that it's important to cooperate with French media outlets so that you can also address the Senegalese diaspora. I was mentioning the concept of voluntary donations, and we have access to more advanced means here, but what we've seen with the diaspora is that on average, they earn 4 times more, 5 times more than local people. So it's very interesting to also be more visible to the diaspora. Another question? Good morning, Marta Kessi, journalist from Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you, Moussa, for having shared this very rich experience. I'd like to know what the impact of your investigations is in terms of making it more accessible to everyone. Earlier, you mentioned the example of the driving license and the corruption around it, corruption that continues despite the fact that you investigated it. It means that the problem remains. What do you do so that it can have an impact at the highest level so that then the problem is then solved thanks to your investigation? Our main goal is to have an impact on the public opinion, so that they can have access to the proofs that we have collected, the documents that we have shared. That's when the audience, the society, can then exert some pressures on governments. What's important to know, and regarding driving licenses corruption, we heard afterwards that there were restrictions. So it wasn't announced officially, but people found out that they were being observed. So that's an interesting type of impact. It also needs to have a higher impact, a larger impact. It must be a collective process, that media outlets, that the public opinion takes action and makes their government act. Because very often the governments are aware of it, but they don't want to act. And so the society can say, we've done our share of the work, and we hope that other people, other media outlets will be able to relay this as well. Regarding passports as well, this had an impact, right? Yes, once we've published our investigation, the passport department was reorganized, and we realized that the middle people who were committing this corruption were then put aside. So this had a positive impact on the delivery of passports. Thank you very much.